look at this Beedrill. It's just a regular bug with just some regular hands. Not exactly cool, but what if we gave it drills for hands? Now we're talking. In a nutshell, that's kind of what Beedrill brings to the table, and today we're gonna see just how fast it can be in a run of Pokemon Red. As soon as the game starts, you're gonna hit an immediate red flag. Our only move is Fury Attack, and let me show you why this makes the rival battle painfully slow. Now, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I hate this move. Fury Attack hits 2 to 5 times, but here's the kicker. The 4 or the 5 hit, the rolls are pretty rare, and even a 4 hit Fury Attack does less damage than a mediocre move like Horn Attack. When you combine that with the 85% accuracy, this move is just destined to let you down at the worst moments. There's no way around it. It's really frustrating, it's inefficient, but this slow start, talking about Fury Attack, it's a really big part of Beedrill's overall story. So we don't want to talk about Fury Attack all day. Let's kind of take a look at the bigger picture, and let's be a little more positive. Now let's take a look under the hood. Now we're going to start backwards here. We're going to start with the TMs. There is some hope for the late game because Beedrill gets access to Swords Dance. It's going to open up some juicy, hard-hitting physical moves later, and if we look at the level up learn set, Twin Needle is Beedrill's signature move, and it's honestly really fun to use. I like using this move a lot. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We need to address what makes the early game so rough, and I've already mentioned it. Fury Attack. We're stuck with it until level 20, and that's ultimately going to be what shapes the run. But don't worry though, guys, we're going to circle back around to Twin Needle. We'll talk about that soon. Now let's take a look at the stats. I'm going to stick with the glass half full mindset here. Beedrill has 80 attack and 75 speed. Those are actually pretty good. 75 is above what you would want for one of these solo runs, but I think the optimism starts to fade pretty quickly when you look at the defenses here. 65 base HP, 40 defense, 45 special. I think Beedrill is practically begging for Alakazam's to clap its cheeks, but let's just dig a little bit deeper. Now, I actually ran a blind run with Scott's Thoughts. It was like, I don't even know, 15 months ago. I'll try to link it down in the description if you want to watch those blind runs. But suffice it to say, I already had experience to show how tricky this Pokemon can be to optimize. Now for this solo run, I have made a lot of adjustments. And when we look at Viridian Forest, I'm going to take on the first optional bug catcher, the mandatory bug catcher, and just a few wild Pokemon just so we can reach level 8. Next up, we're going to do some Light Years Blackout grinding. Now, if you're not familiar, trainer experience grants 50% more than wild Pokemon. And this Diglett here is a pretty high level, so it's pretty efficient to grind, at least for a bit. Now, the catch is that Beedrill can only do this so many times. From my practice, you can get to about level 11 before you accidentally win the battle, but I did manage to go a little bit further. I hit level 12 here, and I'll let this footage play for just a second while I talk about the blind run and kind of how I fine-tune the strategy for this run. So to beat Brock consistently 10 out of 10 times, you would need to grind all the way to level 20 to hit Twin Needle. That's very slow. In the blind run, level 18 seemed possible. That's what I did there, and I fully expected that to be the go-to strategy, but since this is the optimized playthrough, I really tested the limits, and I wanted to see if we could save significant time and give Beedrill just a better shot on the tier list. Now the real problem, the real time sink here is what happens after you win the Light Years battle. The experience sources in Pokemon Red, they just dwindle. Everything's much less efficient, and this is where time really starts to go down the drain. That means we're gonna need to grind significantly in Viridian Forest on wild Pokemon all day long, and there is one optional battle I skipped earlier. I will do that. And before anybody asks, no, I'm not gonna do Rival 1A that's west of Viridian. If you want my honest opinion, I think that battle is one of the worst for experience. Now, if you cannot one-shot his Pokemon, the battle's not great anyway, and you're looking at about 30 experience per turn. Now, for comparison, if you found a level 4 Weedle and you can one-shot it in Viridian Forest, it gives about 28 experience per turn. And there's other factors too, but it's just way more efficient just to kill a Weedle than it is to go fight Rival 1A. Enough of that though. And it goes without saying, grinding wild battles before Brock, never a good sign. It usually means that the run's already kind of in trouble, but I want you to take note of something I'll come back to later, and that's I'm not using struggle along with the surplus of potions that you buy before blackout grinding, but I do want to focus on what the end goal and what the end result's going to be here. I'm going to grind to level 16. This this is where Beedrill learns Focus Energy. This is a bugged and useless move. I want to say 99.9% of the time, but pretty much 100% of the time, this move is complete garbage. But it does let you stall on the Onix when it uses Bide. So the real challenge for Brock is going to be managing PP among other things. Focus Energy does have a massive 30 PP, and you're going to run out of Fury attacks long before you deplete that. So to prep for those struggle strats, I'm going to heal, replenish Fury attack to full PP, then I'm going to go find a Metapod or a Kakuna that cannot hurt me, and I'm going to burn Focus Energy PP down to 8. And with this setup, level 16, I'm finally ready to take on Brock. Let's just see how it goes. And I'm going to be fully transparent with you guys. If you're planning a Beedrill run, do not attempt Brock at level 16 unless you just want to reset a lot. If you're just trying to have fun, this is not the run for you. The strategy is highly inconsistent, and if your luck is bad, you might be resetting like 25 or more times to get this to work. It's very similar to the Hoopa Unbound run I did in Pokemon Crystal earlier this year. And remember, the ultimate goal of these videos is to try to get the best time I can manage, the best speed run if you will, and sometimes that does mean sacrificing consistency. Now think of it this way, there's a really big difference between doing something consistently like 10 times in a row or pulling off a strategy that maybe only works 5% of the time. And I think in a nutshell, that's like the nature of speedrunning. No one cares at all about the 500 failed attempts that you did. They only care about that world record attempt. And in this case, defeating Brock early, it saves you over 30 minutes of in-game time, which is massive when you talk about a lot of runs finishing a little bit over 2 hours, so it's pretty big. And let's actually talk about the battle. The strategy is simple. I'm gonna spam Fury attack and just pray for crits and high hit counts. And surprisingly here, the real issue isn't about Fury attack and dealing resisted damage, it's Beedrill's awful defenses. Geodude and Onix, they're not exactly powerhouses, they don't hit that hard, but it looks like they do on Beedrill, and it really does make it a challenge to survive. If you get unlucky, Geodude can just solo you by itself, so you just hope for a little luck here. And like I mentioned earlier, Fury attack is not gonna last the whole battle. That 8 PP of Focus Energy is purely to avoid bide damage, and you just have to hope Onix doesn't hit some screeches into tackles, and I'm gonna get as close of a battle as you can get here. Tackle's gonna knock me down to 2 HP, Onix goes for Screech, doesn't matter, and that gives me just enough room to finally land a Fury attack. Onix goes for Bide, I make it into the struggle strats, and because I deal so little damage, I'm only gonna take 1 single point of recoil damage, knock out the Onix, survive at 1 HP, and somehow pull off the win, but Beedrill gets past Brock with about a brutal 52-minute time. Obviously, this is not the kind of start that you want to see, but it's important to keep an open mind. Remember, this is not the How Overpowered series. This is not about being a monster Pokemon. This is just about accurately ranking Beedrill. Not every Pokemon can be top tier, that's fine. For every Mewtwo, there's a Zubat, if you know what I'm saying. That's the circle of Pokemon life. Now let's kind of move on to the next route. Now when you black out grind in a run like this, we talked about it early, you're going to spend all of your money just because you're going to lose it anyway. And usually you would use the potions and struggle strategies to avoid going back to the center, but I saved them specifically for these upcoming fights. Why? I can't stress this enough, guys. Fury attack is awful. Struggle actually hits harder than a 3-hit Fury attack. It takes less time, so I think using potions here, it just felt like a fair trade to make this part much faster. And I think the fact that I even had to consider strategies like this says a lot about Beedrill's early game power level and kind of where my head was at planning this run, but you gotta trust me. Level 16 Brock was a huge win, and it's gonna carry Beedrill to be as good as it can be. From my previous attempts leading up to this, Beedrill felt like a, I don't know, C tier Pokemon at best, with the risk to maybe even drop into the high D tier if I didn't play well. And when we get to the split data a little bit later in the video, it's going to be built around a 70 out of 100 run. And early on, I think that this run reminded me a lot of something between maybe Jinx and Executor. That was kind of my initial expectations. We'll eventually circle back around to that, but let's keep pushing forward. In Mount Moon, there are 2 optional battles. Super Nerd, Double Grass Last, pretty standard here. And after healing up, the main concern here is Fury Attack. It's always about Fury Attack, the inconsistent nature of it. If you get unlucky with damage ranges or you just start to miss, you can run out of PP in here, which forces you to pretty much burn 30 straight turns on focus energy. And at that point, you might as well just lay down inside of Mount Moon and let the Zubats eat you alive. Now, thankfully, as you can see from the footage, I actually get through this one pretty comfortably. No issues, but it was something to think about. In Cerulean, I'm going to head straight to Misty. The Goldeen Junior Trainer will give us just enough experience to hit level 20. That means it's time for Twin Needle. Now, don't get your hopes through the roof here because it's not going to completely change the run to a top tier run, but let's actually talk about it. And that's what we're going to do when we're fighting Misty. It's obviously going to be about Twin Needle. And to keep the battle short, Twin Needle's going to two-shot each of her Pokemon. She would need like a Bubble Beam crit or something like that. She gets me low here, it doesn't matter. But let's talk about Twin Needle. It is the only good bug move in Generation 1. It's exclusive to Beedrill, and it functions like double kick mixed with Poison Sting. It has 25 base power, hits twice, and with Stab, its effective power jumps up to 74 in neutral situations. It also has a 20% chance to poison, and it's not game breaking, but it's a really serviceable move. And the key thing to remember here going forward is that Bug is super effective against poison in Generation 1. That's huge because the game is packed with so many poison types, and most importantly, it gives us a rare advantage against psychic types. Getting this move early, it's great, but like I said earlier, keep your expectations in check because we still almost lose this battle. Here we got a pivotal moment. After picking up the second rare candy, I'm immediately going to use 2 of them to hit level 23, and you might be wondering, why would you do that? So let's jump into rival number 2 and talk about it. And if you thought we were done talking about Fury Attack, don't kid yourself. You're never done with Fury Attack. Pidgeotto resists Twin Needle. Fury Attack does more damage on average. It is what it is. Now, this battle can be brutal thanks to Sand Attack, but I wanted to do whatever I could to kind of stabilize the run after barely scraping past Brock on such a luck-based strategy. Now, fortunately, I avoid Sand Attack completely here. I take some damage, and with good AI, you're almost guaranteed to take at least 1 super effective Ember at the end of the fight. Now, thankfully, Fury Attack at level 23, the 2-shot range is reliable enough, and we can actually just move on to more pressing matters. That's going to bring us to Clusters, Nugget Bridge, and the path to Bill's house, guys. It contains the single highest cluster of mandatory battles in the entire game. And here's where Twin Needle's flaws start to show here. It struggles against certain matchups like you would expect, the Pidgeys and the fighting types that resist it, but all things considered, it's not too bad, especially given how rough the start was. Down towards Vermilion, I have to highlight the Triple Pidgey Junior Trainer. Now, this fight has the potential to be downright diabolical if your luck goes south on turn 1. So let's say Fury Attack misses turn 1 and you get hit with a Sand Attack, things can really spiral out of control and you'll hate everything about your life. That's pretty much exactly one of the reasons why I use the rare candies here. There's some tricky sections after Misty, and I wanted to minimize unnecessary resets. Next up, we're in the SSN. I'm not going to dwell too long, but outside of the Brock split, I would say not having access to Body Slam is one of the biggest setbacks in this run. Now, you'll also notice I do make a slight deviation here. I pick up the Max Potion downstairs because I think how badly Beedrill tanks hits, the extra safety here is definitely worth it. I end up taking a beating from the Gentleman guarding the rare candy, but it is worth it because this is yet another candy that I'm going to use immediately. I'm going to hit level 28. We're going to get that sweet damage rounding threshold. I would say this was almost necessary for just keeping the run solid. Rival number 3 carries the same risk as the last fight, mainly Pidgeotto, Sand Attack, but now there's even more threats. You're gonna see Pidgeotto go for 2 quick attacks, and that's great, but I still get beat up a little bit. And let's talk about the pitfalls of this fight. Now, in practice, so many things can go wrong. Sand Attack for one, and let's say maybe you miss against Kadabra. It could hit you with Confusion, do heavy, super effective damage. Think about the end of the fight. If you start missing some Fury attacks there, Charmander can start stacking up a few Embers. And I guess what I'm trying to say here is that this fight is losable, and this is why I needed the Max Potion, because oftentimes you would get hurt pretty bad even in the best case scenario. Hopping in straight to Surge, and it's about as straightforward as it gets, so I'm just going to talk about the Raichu. Beedrill does outspeed, and we comfortably two-shot with Twin Needle, so unless Raichu maybe landed like a critical hit Thunderbolt, it's really hard to lose here. With that out of the way, I think it's finally time to see how Beedrill is kind of shaping up so far. And let's pull up that split data. Now you can see that my generic C tier pace did not factor in a 52-minute Brock split. After the third badge, we're 18 minutes behind and doesn't look great, but like I always say, guys, do not ride off Pokemon off too early. Beedrill had to fight for its life up to this point, and now we've got our signature move. We got Swords Dance. It's on the horizon. I can kind of see it sitting there, and hopefully later the split data will tell a different story when we check back in after rival number 6. I'm going to take a look at Rock Tunnel, usually a part of the game we skip over, but I want to highlight the Boomer Hiker, not because it's awful or that I lost a lot, but because I actually went on the first attempt. In practice, I took some losses here, but only when multiple Pokemon self-destructed, but I make this battle look pretty clean here. It's a bit surprising that this wasn't actually bad even in practice. Skipping ahead to Celadon, I instantly go to the mart. On the agenda today is buying all the top floor TMs, selling them, and that gives me just enough money to squeak out 3 Carbos. That's what we're going to be using for this run. And after that, I go to Erika. She doesn't even need any fancy battle music today because Twin Needle is double super effective against Victory Bell and Vileplume. It's a very easy fight. Don't really have to overthink it, but getting Mega Drain is kind of like the real prize here. We will come back to that in a second. Now we're heading to the Rocket Hideout, and on this channel, guys, we're a believer in Double Edge. I think Double Edge is a fantastic move. A lot of Pokemon have to rely on it, and Beedrill does as well. It's going to be very, very important to the run, and we will talk about it a good bit. You'll see it a lot in battles coming up, but let's get back to Mega Drain. Beedrill does not have great special, so giving it a special move seems kind of weird, but when you realize that you could have like -4 special and still knock out Rhyhorns and Onyxes since they're double weak to it, it makes a lot of sense. Mega Drain's not the best move in the world by any means, and Beedrill's special is really low, but it does come in handy in this run on lots of occasions. Normally, we don't talk about rival number 4, but this is a good time to talk about the tightrope that you walk when you play Beedrill. Double Edge is not an easy move to use, and it requires some precision when planning it out. And without answers to things like Pidgeotto, Gyarados, or eventually Charizard outside of Double Edge, you're gonna start seeing some really close battles where the margin for error is really tight. But for the first time in a while, rival number 4 is useful for something. It does actually help me illustrate that point. We'll see some battles like that later in the run. Now we're going to be doing some cycling road grinding. I've talked about this before, but there are 7 bikers that have poison types, and when Twin Needle's in play, it's super effective against poison types. I've mentioned that a lot. It has 20 power points. It makes this very efficient for Beedrill. And I do think that this has been my go-to and my favorite spot to get extra experience for just about any run for quite a while in Gen 1, because it comes at a part of the game where the training doesn't really have a cost. If you do extra battles, it's always going to cost you time, but after Pokemon Tower, for instance, the only goal is to just get through Cycling Road, unlock Fuchsia, complete the Safari Zone, and then you'll get back on the main path. These trainers exist in a section of the game where there are no main battles. So if you look at something like Silph and you want to grind inside of Silph, you have the looming rival number 5 fight happening. So that means that you'll have to use your inventory like elixirs, potions, or even double back to the healing bed, waste even more time. And I just like where this training is at. Off the top of my head, the only other similar situation in the game is Victory Road. But if you have to grind in Victory Road, you're only gaining extra experience for like 5 battles at the end of the game. But we do pick up all the trainers here. Very good, very welcome. And believe it or not, this is the only time for the rest of the game that Beedrill is going to be doing a grinding session. This will lead us to Safari Zone. I will be picking up the Carbos. I bought 3 earlier. I need a grand total of 5 to make this run pretty clean, and that's going to take us to Silph Co. This will get us the final Carbos of the run. We are going to go up to the 10th floor to get that, the rare candy, and that's pretty much it. Now, Swords Dance is going to be the goal here. It's going to finalize the learn set. This is the learn set for the rest of the run, but I do want to give you guys a bit of a warning here. The safe play, the better play would be to go ahead and do Koga and then come back here later, but I'm not going to be training anymore. I'm going to go straight to rival number 5, and this is a very strange battle, but rather than talk about it, I'm just going to show you. So let's dive in. Starting with Pidgeot, we have a problem. Twin Needle has not been the answer for the birds the whole run, and it's not going to be here. I need to set up 2 times, but with good AI and wing attack, it does an honestly a gross amount of damage. The fact that I out-leveled Pidgeot by several levels and wing attack still does this much damage, it kind of tells you a lot about Beedrill, but unless you get crit, you can survive. You have more than enough HP to fire off a double edge, and you're good. Now the problem here is that I'm low, and I'm going to need 2 more double edges in this fight. I don't use items in battle, and the solution here is to kind of slow things down, set up my final Swords Dance, and now I'm going to use all of my Mega Drains. They are resisted, but if I use all 10, it will give me a pretty significant amount of HP, and with good AI, Execute is only going to use Reflect every single turn, so it's going to give me infinite amount of time just to set up all the stuff, get all the HP back, and eventually I get back to 74 HP, and now it's time for Gyarados. I take it out with double edge, I take about 30 points of recoil, and here's what the fight is ultimately going to come down to. I only speed tied this Alakazam, so I flip the coin here, it comes up tails, I get hit with super effective damage, and we're going to have the first reset of the run. And that's basically the gist of the fight. The start does look volatile, but the Mega Drain Execute strategy actually makes this pretty consistent, and the whole fight just comes down to that coin toss, so I really wasn't bothered having to reset here. Now on the next attempt, I do hit heads, we hit the coin flip, Twin Needle obliterates Alakazam, and I have more than enough HP to double edge Charizard, but I gotta say I love this battle. It was very calculated, and it wasn't a typical strategy that you would normally see. But we get the win here, and things are really about to start to pick up, so hold on to your butts, guys. Let's take a look at Koga, and this was already going to be easy since Twin Needle is super effective against poison. How many times can I say that? But we got Swords Dance now, and it makes things even better. Now, I take an early smoke screen, which is terrible. I didn't want to see that happen, and I do miss here and there during the battle, but that single setup does give me monster damage, and I can actually one-shot the Weezing, so it's a pretty easy battle. Now hopping into Sabrina, you would think that this would be a big point of contention for the run, but I'm really comfortable here for 2 reasons. Number 1, Koga's speed badge boost. I outspeed everything. And number 2, I don't even need to set up at all. So this is just really a good example of Twin Needle doing exactly what the good Lord intended. I sweep this fight with ease, and Beedrill is cruising at this point. And speaking of cruising, it's time for that brisk swim down to Cinnabar. We're just soaking in the rays, dipping our toes in the water. Nothing really to talk about here, but you might think that Beedrill could possibly know what TM28 if it's actually
Tombstoner, brother.
Or not, but he doesn't. He's literally just a bee. What do you really want? How much do bees really know other than get honey? Now we're looking at Blaine, and he is a fire-type gym leader, and I haven't really talked about why I chose red over yellow, but I think the obvious answer is that Blaine and Giovanni are just so much better in yellow version, but Blaine still has an advantage here, and I can guarantee you that an Arcanine Fire Blast could kill like a whole hive of Beedrills. The solution is to just never get hit. It's that easy. Now thankfully Growlithe has both Agility and Ember, which means it's really just a toss-up of what it's going to pick, so as long as you don't get burned, you can just fully set up here, and I want to use Twin Needle on the first 2 Pokemon for easy one-shots. I do use Twin Needle on the Rapidash, but I'm willing just to soak up a Fire Spin if I have to. It misses here, so great. I just really wanted to guarantee that I had enough health against Arcanine to use the double edge comfortably, and you already know, we're already fully set up, so hardly anything's going to survive a double edge. We sweep this fight, 7 badges down. Let's hop straight into the last one. And you guys kind of know what the strat is with this learn set. I'm going to set up Swords Dance and pummel everything into the ground. Now I overcompensate. I probably set up too many times just to make sure I get the ranges. Now Mega Drain's going to handle the Rhyhorn, and at the end of the fight it's going to two-shot Rhydon, and that's really all there is to say. As the footage plays out, I'm also going to go ahead and just tell you guys that I used the final 7 rare candies after this battle. That's going to get me up to level 56, and we can just transition straight into rival number 6. The extra levels and the changes to the rivals team makes this fight significantly easier compared to rival number 5. I'm going to set up twice, and just like Growlithe, Pidgeot now has agility, so you're not guaranteed to take damage. I do take a good bit of damage with everything said, but the upgrade here is that our old pal Rhyhorn, he's a walking super potion. We can just use Mega Drain, slurp up all that health, get it all back, and the battle's pretty much over from this point. You have Double Edge against Gyarados and Charizard, Twin Needle does what it does against the Psychic types, and at the end of the day, Beedrill honestly looking pretty strong at this stage of the game, which is where you want to look strong. Now, my friends, it's time to take one final look at split data. Last time, that 52-minute Brock split had us 18 minutes down after Lieutenant Surge, but look how the turntables. Beedrill, I would say, is a bit of a late bloomer, but after getting to Koga and going into rapid fire mode towards the end of the game, we gained an absurd amount of time. By the time we're going to start the Elite Four, Beedrill is now 23 minutes ahead of the C-tier split, and if you can do some basic math, sometimes I can't, that's a 41-minute swing. And at this point, if you're like me, the question is, how much did I actually underestimate Beedrill? Do you look at the terrible Brock split and the questionable early game and think, this Pokemon just isn't that good? Is it better than we think? And honestly, guys, there's only one way to find out. So Beedrill does not have to train during this section. I'm going to skip the rare candy and Victory Road. There's nothing more to say, and I think we can just dive straight into the Elite Four. Lorelei is not a free battle per se, but it is a pretty simple battle due to one fact. Dugong is rest locked. It will just spam rest until the end of time, letting me make a sandwich. I can go grab a Sody Pop, take my time, take a little nap. I can get to +6 attack, and we're just off from there. Now, Cloyster still does have 980 defense, so you can't really one-shot it. And Lapras does have a 100% chance paralysis body slam. But outside of those things, this battle does go pretty well. It's pretty hard to lose this one. This week, Bruno is pretty much a showcase of just the synergy between Mega Drain and Double Edge. He kindly spreads out his team to allow you to set up comfortably. You can start to use Double Edge a couple of times, heal back up on the second Onix, and then when you got enough health, you can just finish off the Machamp at the end with a single Double Edge. And as bad as we talk about Bruno, we always dog Bruno, he really is a nice guy sometimes. When it comes to Agatha, the win condition is really simple. 2 Swords Dance will let you just hold your finger down on the Twin Needle button and just win. The problem, like always, is just getting there. We all know how Agatha is, how Gengar is, but we see a truly great series of events here. We get an early Confuse Ray, and I just ignore it. I set up, then she swaps into the Golbat, I snap out of Confusion, and I don't really think that this could happen any better, because from this point on, it's time to sweep. We're Twin Needling everything, and we're already on to the next battle. You would think that Lance would be pretty free with how good AI works and the moves that his dragons have, but Gyarados will always be Gyarados. We did the run not too long ago. You already know how good Gyarados is. I need to set up. It goes for Hydro Pump. It does a ton of damage. And then he says, nah, you're gonna get a reset today. He goes for Hyper Beam. And there's really not much more to say than that. Second reset of the run. Basically, you're good in this fight if Gyarados just chills a little bit. If it goes for maybe a Leer, maybe it goes for a Dragon Rage. And here I'm gonna see a double Leer. That's not great, we'll talk about that later. And the plan here is kind of like rival number 5. If I take a lot of damage, I can just use Mega Drain on the Dragonair because it's only gonna use agility against me with good AI. I overcompensate a little bit, and I just wanna guarantee the fight because Aerodactyl was honestly pretty scary. It hits hard already, even if you didn't have your defense drop, but I do. And he can one-shot me. Even like a takedown would probably one-shot me with my defense lowered like this. So I just wanted to be safe. He ends up just missing a Supersonic. And once you get him down, the same thing goes for Dragonite. It'll only spam Barrier. It's also got agility, but you know what I'm saying. Good AI. It'll only use non-damaging moves. So I can just kind of take my time here. I just get it out of here as quick as possible. And that means that we only have one last battle in the run. It might might surprise you, but Pidgeot is the only thing that we need to take a detailed look at in this fight. I need to set up some, but it mirror moves Swords Dance turn 1, turn 2 it charges up a Sky Attack, and that's my hint to just take it out. Basically what you do here depends on the Pidgeot. You're really reactive here, and you cannot under any circumstances tank a Sky Attack. But luckily, +4 on our attack with 2 Swords Dance is what we needed. We take it out. And 5 Carbos was specifically so that I outspeed the Alakazam by 1. The last time that I played a bug Pokemon and I thought I could just speed tie Alakazam, I lost a race. But from this point, guys, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to build up any suspense. The battle is basically over. I can set up that last Swords Dance for safety on Rhydon. I can Mega Drain. That ensures that I'll be at full health. And on Exeggutor, we get to see the ultimate weakness of Exeggutor. It's Twin Needle. It's double super effective. And this Pokemon, I've talked about Exeggutor a ton of times. It's the most menacing Pokemon in the game. It can waste the most time in a speed run. Even Pokemon like Mewtwo have to think about its ranges, but we got one of the most rare things in Gen 1. We got a bug move. It doesn't even need the second hit to completely one-shot it, and I love to see that. And if that doesn't tell you all you need to know, our attack is well over 600 at this point, and even though having drills for arms is a bit of a, you could say, a double-edged sword, I'm going to knock out the Gyarados, followed by the Charizard, and Beedrill is going to finish the run. Beedrill finishes the game with a time of 3 hours and 6 minutes flat with 2 resets, and that's at least 20 to 30 minutes faster than I expected. You can thank the Brock split for that. It's going to land on the tier card with a final rating of 77.73, which is very respectable. Now on the tier list, it's going to sit near the top of the C tier, second place between Muck and Drowsy, and I am incredibly pleased with this result. And if you made it this far, you're a real one. I can't thank you enough. And a special shout out to my channel members and patrons. I appreciate the support a lot. Playlists are in the description if you want more content, more runs, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.